My name is Dr. Pamela Burke. I'm 30 years old. To my family, I'm the quiet one with the boring job, the one who spends her days buried in data instead of doing something real. What they don't know, what they can't know, is that my work is the kind of secret that keeps people safe without anyone realizing it. For the past 6 years, I've served as a senior research coordinator with the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. That title sounds plain, almost dull intentionally so. Beneath it lies the kind of responsibility most people would crumble under. I manage one of the nation's seismic monitoring divisions, the silent guardians that detect underground nuclear tests and verify the world's most fragile peace agreements. My clearance level is AQ, the kind that doesn't come with pride, it comes with isolation. My family never understood that isolation. My mother, for instance, once proudly introduced me at a reunion by saying Pamela does something with the government. Environmental sensors, I think. Technical stuff. Very safe. My father, Ricardo, would scoff government worker. She measures earthquakes and wastes her master's degree staring at computer screens, but at least it's stable. And my sister Ava, 2 years younger, dazzling in her tailored suits and marketing career, would always smile that faint smile of superiority and whisper, Pamela's job is fine if you like rocks. They never meant to be cruel. But their arrogance was effortless, a family tradition inherited like an heirloom. They assumed understanding without ever asking. They filled the silence with certainty, and certainty is more dangerous than ignorance. Every Christmas dinner became a stage for my patients. My father boasting about Ava's six-figure contracts, my mother suggesting I should use that desert land Grandpa left me to build something useful. A spa, maybe? It's just sitting there, Pamela. She'd sigh, wine glass trembling between jeweled fingers. It's being used, I'd answer softly. For what? There's nothing there. There's enough, I'd reply, forcing a smile. They never pressed further, partly because they didn't care to, partly because I was trained not to answer. The land wasn't empty. It was Site 7 Tango, a restricted research facility disguised as inherited property. Beneath those 40 acres of nothing radiation detection sensors and seismic monitors fed classified data straight to Los Alamos and Livermore. To the untrained eye, it was desert dust and weather boxes. To me, it was a silent fortress. Sometimes when I visited the site, I'd park my SUV at dawn and watch the horizon bleed orange. The metal boxes would hum softly beneath the wind. That sound, barely audible, was more alive than any family conversation I'd had in years. The desert kept my secrets better than blood ever had. But secrets have weight, and mine were starting to press down heavier with every phone call home. Last Thanksgiving, my father cornered me near the sink, while the rest of the family laughed over wine. You're wasting potential, mija, he said, drying a plate with unnecessary aggression. That land, 40 acres of nothing, you could sell it for 200 grand easily. It's not for sale, Dad. Why not? You never go there. You're not using it. I am using it. For what he pushed. You think you're smarter than everyone, don't you? Sitting there with your secret job, acting like no one can understand. I put the plate down slowly. I'm not acting, Dad. You just never asked the right questions. He laughed bitterly and walked away. Ava muttered something about how I needed to loosen up. My mother sighed. The moment ended the way most of our family moments did, with avoidance. Still, something shifted that night. The way my father's eyes lingered on me, the way Ava whispered to him later in the kitchen, it felt like a storm was forming quietly behind closed doors. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I'd been trained to be. The following month, I began noticing odd things. A real estate appraisal letter addressed to my parents' house referencing my Nevada property. A message from my mother asking for the land deed just in case of emergencies. And then one small text from Dad that I couldn't quite shake off. You'll thank us one day for making something useful out of that desert. At the time, I laughed it off. My parents had been talking about that land for years. They'd never actually do anything with it. At least that's what I thought. That Thursday morning, I was in my Washington, D.C. office reviewing seismic readings from a suspected North Korean test when my phone buzzed with a new message. My father's name lit up the screen. Great news. We found a buyer for your Nevada land. Closing next week. $240,000 cash. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My coffee cup slipped, scattering across classified documents. My heartbeat thudded like a countdown timer. No, he couldn't have. Not without me. Not with that land. I called him instantly. He answered cheerfully as though he'd just done me a favor. Dad, I said, voice trembling. What buyer? For your empty land, he said, laughing. We finally did what you should have done years ago. Sold it. You'll thank us when the money hits your account next week. Dad, you can't. Oh, relax. It's done. The developer's name is Robert Chin, friend of a friend. Building a resort. Great opportunity for everyone. I stood up so fast my chair toppled. Dad, that property is restricted. It cannot be sold. Restricted. It's empty desert, Pamela. Nothing but dust and boxes. We already checked with an appraiser. You're sitting on money. The hum of my office seemed to fade. Only my father's voice remained steady, confident, wrong. Who gave you permission to do this? I demanded. We have power of attorney. Remember when you were in grad school? You signed it so we could handle paperwork. Still valid. It expired 8 years ago. Well, our lawyer said we could still act in your best financial interest since you weren't using it. My stomach turned cold. Dad, I whispered, you just committed a federal crime. He laughed. You've been in that government bubble too long. It's just land, sweetheart. Don't be dramatic. He hung up before I could respond. I stood there numb, staring at the blinking cursor on my monitor. The numbers on the seismic feed blurred. Then, like a fault line giving way beneath my feet, realization struck. My family wasn't just meddling anymore. They'd set off a chain reaction that could destroy everything. And they didn't even know it. For a few moments after that call, I just stood there frozen. My father's voice still echoed in my mind, calm, confident, so certain he was doing the right thing. The same tone he'd used when I was 16, and he told me he knew better than I did about my own future. But this time his arrogance wasn't just insulting, it was catastrophic. The hum of servers in my office filled the silence. Screens flickered with seismic data and encrypted communications. Yet all I could see was that message on my phone closing next week. $240,000 cash. That number, that casual tone. They were trying to sell Site 7 Tango, 40 acres of restricted federal research land disguised as family inheritance. If that sale went through classified seismic monitoring hardware, millions of dollars worth of sensors would fall into private hands. Worse, unknown hands. I forced myself to move. I locked my workstation and went straight to my supervisor's office. Dr. Martinez, I said, barely keeping my voice steady. We have a situation. He looked up from his desk calm as ever. Define situation. My family. They're attempting to sell Site 7 Tango. For the first time in 6 years of working with him, I saw genuine disbelief flash across his face. That's impossible. The property's under secure control. The deed's in my name, part of the concealment protocol, I said quickly. They accessed old power of attorney documents. Outdated, but they think it gives them the right. Martinez's jaw tightened. Who's the buyer? A man named Robert Chin. Claims to be a developer. I haven't verified anything else. He didn't waste a second. He reached for the secure line on his desk. DOE Security. This is Dr. Martinez. Flag an active breach on research site 7 Tango. Potential unauthorized sale by family of authorized clearance holder. He glanced up at me. Dr. Burke, you're certain they made contact with a buyer? I nodded. Yes, they told me the closing is next week. He swore softly, something I'd never heard him do. Sit down. We're escalating. Within minutes, my phone was confiscated, the door sealed, and our office transformed into a command center. Calls flowed like an emergency broadcast chain. Department of Justice, FBI, Counterintelligence, DOE, Legal Division, U.S. Marshals. I sat there in stunned silence as the realization sank in. My own family had just triggered a federal intelligence breach. When the FBI special agent finally appeared on the secure conference feed, his tone was sharp and clinical. Dr. Burke, I'm Agent Thomas Crawford. We're opening a case file immediately. You'll be briefed as we go. You said the buyer's name is Robert Chin. Yes, we're already running background. If he's interested in land near classified seismic installations, that's not random. He leaned forward, voice lowering. We've seen patterns like this before. Shell developers targeting rural properties near military or research facilities. Sometimes they're legitimate, sometimes they're not. My stomach clenched. You think he's an intelligence asset? We're not ruling it out. Dr. Martinez interjected, his voice taut. Site 7. Tango isn't just another node. It's one of our most sensitive seismic research facilities. If anyone tampers with those systems, they'd have direct insight into our nuclear test detection network, Crawford finished grimly. Not good. I exhaled shakily. Agent Crawford, my family doesn't know anything. They think it's empty desert. They're just ignorant. Ignorance doesn't prevent damage, Crawford said. We've seen well-meaning civilians compromise national security before. It's not about intent. It's about exposure. Hours blurred. Legal teams, counterintelligence analysts, U.S. Marshals. Everyone wanted details. How the property was titled. Who had physical access. Whether any documentation could link the site to the federal government. Each answer tightened the noose. My father's insistence on helping me had turned him into an unknowing criminal. My sister's arrogance, Pamela never uses it anyway, had become a potential espionage vector. I wanted to scream, to call them again, to make them understand. But protocol was clear. I was to have no contact with any involved party. From this point on, the investigation controlled everything. By evening, Agent Crawford called back with an update. Dr. Burke. We ran Chin's name. He's not just a developer. Multiple overseas trips, China, Singapore, Kazakhstan. Shell companies across 3 continents, 2 of them traced to known intelligence fronts. I felt my pulse quicken. So it's confirmed. He's being watched. Now we know why he was interested in your land. My throat tightened. My father, mother, sister, they're meeting with him next week. Not anymore, Crawford said flatly. We'll intervene before then. Martinez leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Jesus, I never thought I'd see the day one of my own coordinators would need federal protection from her own family. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling again. I pressed them together until the shaking stopped. This isn't their fault, I whispered. They didn't know. Maybe not, Crawford said, but they should have asked before acting. They'll face consequences. Ignorance doesn't erase exposure. At 5:30 p.m., a storm rolled over Washington. The sky went gray, and the lights flickered across the lab. Thunder cracked somewhere far off fitting. I thought for a day that started with silence and ended in chaos. Martinez turned to me as agents packed up evidence logs. You did the right thing, Pamela. You reported immediately. You're doing your duty. I forced a faint smile. My duty. Yes. But duty doesn't comfort you when you realize the people you love are now federal suspects. Duty doesn't erase the sound of your father's voice saying, we're just helping you. Duty doesn't prepare you for what happens when the line between love and law becomes irreversible. That night, as I left the building, my phone buzzed again, a new message. From Mom. Sweetheart, I know you're upset, but please don't make this harder. Your dad's finally handling things. The buyer is a nice man, very polite. He's coming to our house tomorrow to finalize details. I stopped in the rain, staring at the glowing screen. Robert Chin. At my parents' house. Tomorrow. The streetlights blurred in the downpour. The world felt smaller, darker, like something closing in. I whispered to no one, Mom, you have no idea what you've done. And for the first time in years, I felt fear not for my country, but for my family. By dawn the next day, I was operating on caffeine, adrenaline, and disbelief. The situation had gone from family misunderstanding to federal emergency overnight. A team of agents had already been dispatched to Phoenix, where my parents lived, to monitor all activity near their home. The plan was simple: intercept the transaction before any documents were signed, before Chin could gain even a sliver of legitimacy over Site 7 Tango. Simple plans. I've learned never stay simple when family is involved. At 7:42 a.m., I sat in a secured operations room surrounded by screens and agents in dark suits. Agent Crawford stood at the center, calm but razor-focused. Dr. Burke. He said, your family is now under surveillance. Our primary objective is containment, not confrontation. But if Chin shows up at that house, all bets are off. I nodded numb. How are they reacting? He hesitated, blissfully unaware. Your mother is baking muffins. Your father is printing what appear to be sale documents. Your sister is texting someone, probably Chin, about arrival time. The absurd normalcy of it all made my stomach twist. Muffins and espionage. Only in my life. By mid-morning, Agent Crawford received the confirmation he'd been waiting for. Chin's car had been sighted in unmarked black sedan Arizona plates, registered to one of his shell companies. He was headed straight for my parents' house. Crawford's jaw clenched. We move now. Within minutes, the radio chatter filled the room. U.S. Marshals on site. 4 subjects inside residence. Unknown male approaching front door. Confirm ID, Crawford ordered. Positive match for Robert Chin. Every sound in that room disappeared except the agent's voice over the feed. Audio transcript, Operation 7T field recording. Marshall Federal Agents. Step back, sir. You are being detained pending investigation of unauthorized property sale. Dad Ricardo. What? This is ridiculous. We're in the middle of a legal real estate closing, Marshall. Sir, the property in question is a restricted federal research facility. You are attempting to sell classified government land. Mom, classified. No, that's our daughter's land. She inherited it, Marshall. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back. Ava. You can't do this. We have paperwork power of attorney, Marshall. Expired invalid. You are committing fraud. Chin in Mandarin. Lengjing Dian. Wu Hui Chu Li to calm down. I'll handle this. Crawford listening. He's speaking Mandarin. Move to secure his phone now. Marshall subject Chin detained. All parties in custody. End of transcript. I exhaled shakily as the line went silent. Crawford looked up at me. It's over for now. But it wasn't over, not even close. Within hours, Chin's phone revealed encrypted messages tied to contacts in Beijing, Macau, and Moscow. Financial records showed transfers through offshore accounts coded property acquisitions near sensitive U.S. facilities, military bases, research labs, energy plants. Each transaction followed the same pattern. Buy worthless-looking land, build small developments, then quietly install equipment under the guise of construction. He's not just a con artist, Crawford said grimly. He's a collector. Every property he targets lines up with some form of federal installation. And my family just gave him the 12th, I whispered. Almost gave him, he corrected. You stopped it. That night during the debrief, I could feel the agents watching me not out of suspicion, but pity. I was the daughter who turned in her parents, the professional who chose her clearance over her blood. Dr. Martinez placed a hand on my shoulder as the room cleared. You did the right thing, Pamela. You may have saved us from a serious breach. I nodded automatically, but my mind replayed my father's voice from the intercepted recording, his disbelief, his anger. You can't arrest us for selling land. He genuinely didn't know. He couldn't have. And yet ignorance didn't matter anymore. The law doesn't differentiate between malice and stupidity when national security is at stake. By morning, the headlines were already forming in my imagination. Arizona family. Arrested in federal espionage sting developer linked to Chinese intelligence detained in Phoenix. It wouldn't take long before my colleagues pieced together that Dr. Burke was the daughter in question. My clearance would shield me legally, but socially, professionally. It would stain me forever. As the next briefing began, Crawford spoke with quiet gravity. Dr. Burke, your family is being held in a federal facility in Phoenix. They'll be questioned separately. You are not to contact them under any circumstances. My throat tightened. Understood. He hesitated, then added, Be prepared for this to get ugly. If Chin's connections are as deep as they appear, your family might face more than fraud charges. I met his eyes. You mean espionage? He didn't answer. Late that night, as I reviewed classified documents for the case, my secure line rang. An unlisted number, internal call. I answered. Dr. Burke said a voice I hadn't heard since the day before. My father. Dad, I'm calling from detention, he said, his tone trembling between anger and confusion. They're saying we committed espionage. Do you know how insane that sounds? Dad, listen to me. The man you tried to sell my land to, Robert Chin, is a Chinese intelligence operative. You let him into our home. You shared property details tied to federal monitoring systems. Do you understand what that means? Silence. Then a hollow laugh. You're exaggerating again. You were just what I snapped. Trying to help. You almost sold a restricted nuclear monitoring site to a foreign government. You nearly compromised national security. His voice cracked. We didn't know, Pamela. You never told us, because it's classified. You weren't supposed to know. He paused for a long moment and then quietly, You're really going to let them lock us up? I closed my eyes. The hum of the server room filled the silence between us. I didn't lock you up, Dad, I said softly. You did. He said nothing. The call disconnected. Afterward, I sat there for what felt like hours, the glow of my monitor flickering across my face. Somewhere in Phoenix, my parents were in holding cells. Somewhere else, Chin was being interrogated for espionage. And somewhere deep beneath the Nevada desert, the sensors at Site 7 Tango pulsed steadily, unaware that they'd almost been sold for $240,000. That night, I realized something I'd been denying for years. Family can destroy you more completely than any foreign threat because they never mean to. The next 72 hours felt like living inside a slow-motion disaster. Every detail of my family's lives, emails, phone records, bank statements was being stripped bare by federal agents. Photos of birthday parties and vacation receipts were now evidence. The people who'd raised me had become data points in an investigation report. I sat in the secure operations room, watching as the FBI projected a timeline of events on the wall. At the top of the chart, subjects Ricardo Burke, age 62, Marisol Burke, age 58, Ava Burke, age 28. Below that, Robert Chin, alias Multiple Passports, suspected foreign intelligence operative. Agent Crawford led the briefing, his voice low but steady. Financial tracing confirms that Chin wired a $25,000 good faith deposit to an account controlled by Mr. and Mrs. Burke yesterday morning. That constitutes attempted transfer of federal property. All three family members are now formally subjects in a national security case. I wanted to interrupt to explain that my parents thought it was harmless, but every defense that formed in my mind collapsed under the weight of facts. They'd signed documents, shared coordinates, posted public listings. They had walked right into a spy's hands because they were sure they knew better than me. Dr. Martinez glanced my way. "Pamela, you don't have to stay for this." "I do," I said quietly. "It's my fault they're involved." Crawford shook his head. "No, you didn't hand a spy a map to a nuclear facility." They did. Hours later, the field agents returned from Phoenix. One of them, Marshall Green, spoke softly, almost apologetically, as he described what he'd seen. "They didn't resist," he said. "Your mother kept asking if you were okay. Your father mostly shouted about lawyers. Your sister refused to believe any of it until we showed her the classified seals on the files." Chin stayed silent. We found 3 encrypted phones in his briefcase. I swallowed hard. Did they understand what was happening? "Not really," he admitted. "They thought it was some kind of mistake." A mistake. That word echoed in my chest like a seismic pulse. My entire job was to prevent catastrophic mistakes, and yet here I was, the epicenter of one. That evening, the agents played a clip from Chin's interrogation. He sat in a white room, calm as stone, his wrists cuffed. The translator relayed his words. "Americans always sell what they don't understand. I simply offer a price." He smiled faintly when he said it, like this was a game he'd won 1,000 times before. Crawford muted the audio and turned to me. "He's running the same pattern we've seen across 7 states. Rural acquisitions near restricted sites. Your property was the most valuable yet." He almost pulled it off. Almost. That word should have brought relief. Instead, it felt like poison. The following morning, they brought me into a video link with the assistant U.S. attorney overseeing the case. "Dr. Burke," she said, "I'm afraid your family will be charged. The evidence is overwhelming fraud, attempted sale of federal property, negligent security breach." My throat tightened. Will they be charged with espionage? Not unless we can prove intent. Right now, it appears they acted out of ignorance and greed, not allegiance. That saves them from life sentences, but not from prison. "Prison," I repeated like tasting a foreign word. "How long?" "If they cooperate, 3 to 5 years." I nodded mechanically. Understood. But inside, something fractured. 3 to 5 years might as well have been forever. That night, I stayed at the operations center long after the others left. The fluorescent lights hummed softly. Through the glass, I could see the reflection of my own face, calm, composed, and utterly hollow. Dr. Martinez entered quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "You haven't gone home in 2 days." "Home," I murmured. That word doesn't mean much right now. He set 1 mug beside me. "I've worked in this department for 33 years. Do you know how many times family interference has caused classified breaches?" I shook my head. 6, he said. "And every time it starts with someone who thought they were helping. Love makes people reckless." I looked down at my hands. "It also makes people stupid." He sighed. "Sometimes it just makes them human." The next morning, the agents transferred my parents and sister to federal detention in D.C. for questioning. I wasn't allowed to see them, but Crawford gave me updates. "Your mother's cooperating," he said. "She keeps apologizing to every agent in the room. Your sister's angry defensive blames you for not warning them. Your father, he's in denial." "Denial?" I asked. "He still believes Chin was a legitimate developer, thinks this is all bureaucratic overreach." That sounded exactly like my father. Too proud to admit he'd been wrong, too stubborn to believe he'd been used. That afternoon, Crawford approached me as I was reviewing classified filings. His tone was unexpectedly gentle. Dr. Burke, we need to document your statement formally. But before that, off the record, are you okay? I stared at him. You mean, am I okay watching my parents get handcuffed on federal charges because they tried to sell my job site? He didn't flinch, something like that. I forced a thin smile. I'm fine, Agent Crawford. I chose this life. I knew secrecy meant separation. He studied me for a moment. Secrecy's one thing. Losing them is another. Losing them, I repeated softly. I think I lost them years ago. This just made it official. That night, after I'd finally gone home, my phone rang again, a restricted number. My first instinct was dread. I answered anyway. Pamela. My mother's voice trembled through the line. They said I could call once. Sweetheart, please tell them this is a mistake. Your father didn't mean to. He thought he just wanted to help. Her voice broke. I could hear the faint echo of fluorescent buzzing on her end. A holding cell. I closed my eyes. Mom, you shared restricted coordinates with a foreign agent. I didn't know, she cried. He said he just needed it for paperwork. He said you'd already agreed. He lied, I whispered. That's what they do. Silence. Then a small broken question. Are you angry at us? No, I said. Anger would mean I still expect better. She sobbed quietly. I listened until the call ended on its own. When I returned to the office the next morning, Crawford met me at the door. Chin confessed, he said. He was working under direction from Chinese intelligence. We also recovered communications about 11 other properties across the country. My pulse quickened. Were any compromised? Not yet. You reporting this stopped him in time. Stopped him. Saved lives. Those were the words I'd wanted to hear for years, and now they felt meaningless. Crawford hesitated before adding, You realize what that means for your family, right? Chin's being charged with espionage. The plea deals for your parents and sister will include cooperation testimony, full disclosure. They'll still serve time. I nodded slowly. They'll serve, and I'll keep working. You can live with that, he asked quietly. I met his eyes. I have to. That evening, as the sun sank behind the Potomac, I stood by the window of the operations floor, watching the sky fade to burnt orange, the same color as the Nevada desert I'd once called wasted land. Somewhere beneath that sand, the seismic monitors still pulsed faithfully, doing their job without complaint, without recognition. Maybe that's all I was ever meant to be, a silent instrument of vigilance, watching the world tremble while pretending not to feel the quake. 3 weeks later, I found myself sitting in the back row of a federal courtroom, the air thick with fluorescent light and the scent of antiseptic cleaning fluid. The Burke family, my family, sat at the defense table, their wrists unshackled, but their lives undeniably bound. Mom looked small in her beige prison jumpsuit, hands folded neatly in her lap as if praying for this all to be a nightmare. Dad's jaw was locked in that familiar posture of pride, chin raised, eyes ahead, refusing to be humbled. And Ava, she looked like a stranger. The sharpness that once defined her, the marketing poise, the designer confidence was gone. In its place was a trembling woman who kept biting her lip until it bled. At the opposite table sat Robert Chin, wrists cuffed, eyes dark and unreadable. Even now, surrounded by armed marshals, he managed to look composed, like the courtroom itself was another boardroom he intended to control. I had spent my career monitoring vibrations beneath the earth, but that day the quake came from within. The clerk called the case United States of America v. Robert Chin Ricardo, Burke Marisol Burke, and Ava Burke. The courtroom murmured, the names echoed, every syllable carved deeper into my chest. The assistant U.S. attorney rose, first voice, steady, but unsparing. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. The defendants attempted to sell restricted federal property containing classified seismic monitoring and radiation detection systems, critical infrastructure vital to national security. Mr. Chin orchestrated this transaction as part of an intelligence acquisition operation targeting U.S. facilities. The Burke family facilitated his access through fraudulent authority and disclosure of protected information. Each word was deliberate, final, unforgiving. When it was the defense's turn, my father's lawyer tried to humanize him. Your Honor, the Burkes are not traitors. They are ordinary citizens who misunderstood the nature of their daughter's work. They acted out of ignorance, not malice. Judge Sarah Mitchell, a woman known for her composure, adjusted her glasses and stared at my father. Mr. Burke, is that true? You acted out of ignorance. Yes, Your Honor, Dad said stiffly. I thought it was just empty desert. We had no idea it was whatever they're saying it was. The judge's tone sharpened. You had access to your daughter, a federal employee. You could have asked before selling the property. Did you? He hesitated. She said it wasn't for sale. And you thought you knew better. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Judge Mitchell leaned forward. Ignorance is not a defense, Mr. Burke. It is an aggravating factor. You assumed understanding where you had none, and in doing so, you endangered your country. The room fell utterly silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade. When it was Ava's turn, her voice cracked as she spoke. I thought I was helping. I thought she didn't care about the land. I never imagined it was something important. Her lawyer prompted, You understand now the nature of that property. She nodded weakly. Yes, I saw the photos. The underground sensors. The cables. Her words dissolved into tears. I almost helped a foreign agent spy on my own sister. Mom reached out to her, whispering her name, but the marshals gently pulled her hand back. Then came Chin's turn. He spoke through a translator, his tone almost amused. I did not force them, he said in Mandarin. They came to me. They advertised the land online. I saw an opportunity, as anyone would. When asked whether he knew about the classified facility beneath the land, his lips curled slightly. I know now. The translator hesitated on that last line, but the damage was already done. The truth didn't need translation. The sentencing came quickly. Chin life imprisonment without parole for espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. My family. 3 years in federal prison, each $100,000 restitution. 5 years supervised release. When the judge read the words guilty on all counts, Ava broke down completely. Mom closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Dad simply stared straight ahead, the pride finally gone from his face, replaced by something smaller, older, and hollow. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The tears had frozen somewhere deep inside me weeks ago. After the hearing, Ava's lawyer approached me in the hallway. Dr. Burke, he said gently, my client, your sister, wants to speak to you. Just 5 minutes. I have nothing to say, I replied automatically. She just wants to apologize. Apologies. The word felt foreign now, like currency from a bankrupt country. Still, I followed him into the interview room. Ava sat there, hands cuffed, eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, her face crumpled. Pamela, I'm so sorry. I said nothing. I didn't understand what you did, she continued, her voice trembling. I thought you were wasting your life. I thought I knew better. And She stopped, choking on her own words. I could have helped someone destroy everything you've worked for. I exhaled slowly. You didn't just endanger my work, Ava. You endangered the country. You treated something sacred like a real estate listing. I know, she whispered. I know now. You thought arrogance was harmless, I said quietly. It never is. Her eyes filled again. Will you ever forgive us? I looked at her for a long time. She was still my sister. She still had the same brown eyes that used to beg me to share my Halloween candy. But now those eyes were haunted. Forgiveness, I said at last, isn't the same as forgetting. And I can't forget. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. I just wanted to help. And that, I said softly, was the problem. When I left the room, Dr. Martinez was waiting outside. She'll serve her time, he said quietly. They all will. I nodded. Good. He hesitated. And you? I'll keep doing my job, I said, protecting the things they tried to sell. He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. You did what most people couldn't. No, I said, I did what most people wouldn't. As I walked down the hallway, I caught sight of my reflection in the glass window. Dark suit, straight posture, eyes, too tired for 30. I didn't look like a daughter anymore. I looked like an agent, a keeper of silence. Outside, the winter air bit at my face. Reporters clustered near the steps shouting questions. Dr. Burke, is it true your own family tried to sell a nuclear monitoring site? Did you turn them in? Do you have any comment on the sentencing? I didn't answer a single one. I just walked to my car, the wind whipping around me, my badge heavy in my pocket. Somewhere inside that courthouse, my parents were being led away to prison. And for the first time, I realized the most painful part wasn't their punishment. It was the silence that followed. The kind that stretches across years, across blood, across everything that used to mean home. 3 years later, the Nevada desert looked exactly the same. Unchanged, unforgiving, eternal. I parked my black government-issued SUV at the edge of Site 7 Tango, stepping out into the wind that carried the scent of dust and iron. The horizon stretched endlessly, vast emptiness, hiding millions of dollars worth of classified technology humming beneath the surface. The hum was softer now, deeper, stronger, just like me. I am Dr. Pamela Burke, Director of National Security Research Operations for the Department of Energy. I oversee every seismic monitoring and radiation detection site across 7 states. My clearance is higher now, my circle of trust smaller than ever. The commendation from the Secretary of Energy sits framed in my office in D.C., a golden plaque for exceptional service in the protection of national infrastructure. It doesn't mention the truth that the threat came from my own blood. Some things, it seems, are too uncomfortable for official records. As I walk toward the perimeter fence, the sensors recognize my ID, and the steel gate unlocked with a hiss. A pair of uniformed security officers nodded in greeting. They knew better than to ask questions. I moved toward the main control bunker, a low concrete structure disguised as an abandoned weather station. Inside, the air was cool, sterile, silent. Screens flickered softly, showing lines of seismic data, a constant heartbeat of the earth. Everything was operational. Everything was secure. And yet, standing there, I felt that same quiet ache, the weight of all I'd lost to keep this place safe. When my family was released from prison, they didn't contact me. Not once. Ava moved to Seattle, working small contracts under a new name. Mom and Dad relocated to New Mexico, a quiet retirement town where no one knew who they were. I sometimes saw their names in background clearance reports when conducting federal vetting, purely procedural, purely impersonal, a bureaucratic ghost of what once was a family. There were no more phone calls, no birthday cards, no Merry Christmas texts from Mom. The silence became routine, almost comforting. Still, sometimes, when the night is too quiet, I wonder if they think about me, the way I still think about them, not as traitors or criminals, but as people who got lost in the gap between love and understanding. As I reviewed the system logs, one of my junior technicians, new nervous, maybe 25, appeared at the doorway. "Dr. Burke," he said carefully. The external audit team from Washington sent their report. Site 7. Tango is rated 0 risk. You've built quite the reputation. I nodded. That's the goal, to make myself obsolete. He hesitated. "Ma'am, may I ask something?" "Why name it Tango?" I almost smiled. "Because it takes 2, I said. 1 to keep secrets, 1 to betray them." He didn't know how to respond to that. Most people don't. When he left, I stood alone again, staring at the data feed scrolling across the monitor. Each line represented a pulse from beneath the ground, a subtle reminder that the earth is never truly still. Even silence moves if you listen closely enough. That was the lesson I learned from my family. Stillness can hide the greatest danger, and sometimes betrayal begins with good intentions. Outside, the wind began to rise. I stepped back into the desert, my boots sinking slightly into the sand. The sky burned orange against the horizon, identical to the evening when I first realized what my father had done. Back then, I had felt panic, desperation, disbelief. Now all I felt was resolve. There's something about this place that humbles you. The desert doesn't care about right or wrong, loyalty or betrayal. It remembers everything, but it forgives nothing. I walked to the edge of the property where a weather-worn sign stood half buried in sand. United States government property. Restricted area. Trespassers will be prosecuted. The paint was peeling, but the warning still stood unwavering. I ran my fingers across the faded letters, the metal warm under the sun. My family once thought this land was worth $240,000. They had no idea it was protecting a network worth billions, or that it would cost them 3 years of their lives to learn the truth. I knelt, brushing sand from the corner of the sign, and whispered to no one. "You thought I was guarding empty desert. You were wrong. I was guarding the country." A gust of wind answered, scattering the sand across my boots like ash. In D.C., I'm known as a woman of few words, detached, precise, impossible to read. Some call me cold. Maybe they're right. But when you've watched your own family hand national secrets to a smiling stranger, warmth becomes a liability. Sometimes when I lie awake at night, I replay my father's voice in my head. "You'll thank us one day for making something useful out of that desert." He was wrong. The desert was already useful. He just didn't understand what it was protecting or what it would cost to keep it safe. I turned back toward the facility. The security lights flickered on, one by one, casting long, golden beams across the sand. For a moment it looked almost beautiful, like stars fallen to earth. This place isn't empty. It never was. It's full of echoes, of secrets, of sacrifices, of lessons etched in silence. The desert remembers everything, and so do I.